Welcome to Out of My Mouth, the program where raw thoughts meet unfiltered conversations.
Join us as we dive into the depths of human experience, where we share stories, perspectives, and insights that just might challenge the status quo.
Get ready to laugh, cry, and ponder the world around you like never before. This is Out of My Mouth.
The views and opinions of our guest and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of New Thought Media Network, or any organization we may be affiliated with. Here at New Thought Media Network, we welcome freedom of speech and courageous conversations. There are many topics that can be difficult to navigate. Challenging the status quo and engaging in lively debate is important to expanding our understanding of one another, and life in general. Creating a peaceful world doesn't happen because no one disagrees, it happens from a willingness to understanding one another. In our programming, we strive to expand consciousness and assist people in creating remarkable lives. Your comments are welcome at info@ntmedia.org.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming from. Good day. Welcome to Out of My Mouth, formerly known as Spiritual Cafe. My name is Cheryl Rogers, and my co-host today is
Marg Dupuis. Hello to fall.
Before we begin, we'd love to be able to just acknowledge the land that we all come from, and just hear these words as your own. In the spirit of reconciliation and peace, I am grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. I thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. I recognize our oneness. I realize our history. We choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And now it's my privilege to introduce Joan Grundy. Joan is a retired Catholic high school vice principal who continues to do talks and workshops in the areas of spirituality, wellness, and support for the 2SLGBTQ+ youth. She identifies as a gay woman and has worked with gay and transgendered youth for many years in her roles as a high school teacher, chaplain, guidance counselor, and administrator. Joan is the author of a book entitled A Deepening Life, which I happen to have a copy of, which details her journey to live consciously and help others to do the same. It is available online at all major bookstores, but is most reasonably priced at volumesdirect.com. In her leisure time, Joan enjoys reading, writing, traveling, kayaking, cycling, and golfing. I wonder where she finds all this time. Her undergraduate degree is a joint honors in English and Religious Studies from St Jerome's University. Her Bachelor of Education is from Brock University, and her Master's of Theological Studies with a concentration in counselling was begun at Notre Dame in Southbend, Indiana, and completed at Wilfred Laurier. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So nice to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
So your book.
Yeah, it's been, it's interesting. I can't believe it was released in 2015, 9 years ago. It sure doesn't feel that long.
And so you wrote words to inspire other people. Has it inspired you too, as well as other people?
Well, it's interesting. I always loved writing, even as a kid. I run into my grade three teacher once in a while, and she still reminds me of, she'd give us an assignment to write a page, and I'd hand in 8 if it was a story. So could be maybe some of my Irish background too. Why say something in one sentence if you can use 50? So I always had a love of writing, and it was always kind of on my live life to the full list, that I'd like to write a book. And I knew I had some things to say, but the hardest part for me was figuring out where to begin. And my father had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and the Alzheimer's Society had asked me if I would do a little talk to kick off the Alzheimer's Awareness Month here in Brantford, my hometown. I said, sure. So I could have probably just written a page, but it ended up being 5. And afterwards, one of the local politicians who I knew came up and put his arm on my shoulder. He said, I think you have the beginnings of a book there. And it was a light bulb moment. And I thought, okay, this is where I can start. So the first chapter actually is called Unexpected Gifts, about the lessons and the learnings of walking with my father alongside my family. It wasn't just me, my mother in particular, who was his closest companion on the journey. And so, just wanting to cull some wisdom and cull some positivity out of something, that was quite devastating. And, I do say that, and I know those of you listening who have somebody in your family with any form of dementia, I think will get this. It feels like the whole family has it, not just one person, because of the devastation of it. Mm-hmm. But, I always wanted to live consciously, live a reflected life. And I really believe that wisdom comes at the intersection with our lived experience and our reflection upon it. And oftentimes I think that reflection piece is taken out of the equation. So sometimes we repeat patterns in our lives, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in individual, behavior patterns, because we've not done that reflection. So I think this book, long-winded answer here for you, was just my way of doing some reflection on my life up until that moment in time. And the 5 chapters reflect, I think, some universal themes, and that seem to have been confirmed by people who have read the book and who have graciously taken time to give me feedback, that although my story is individual, the themes of it seem to be quite universal in terms of, on the path with a loved one who's suffering. And then in chapter 2, the path of integrity, trying to live a life of authenticity and integrity amidst discerning at 33 that I was a gay woman. Here I am, head of a religion department in a Catholic high school, wanting to be in relationship. Church teaches it's okay to be gay, but not to express it relationally, sexually. Mm-hmm. So, quite a crossroad there. And then chapter 3, guided by grace, talking about what I call spirit guides in my life and the wisdom that I learned through them. Chapter 4 about relationships, loving, learning, letting go. And then this is a real test of my knowledge here of what these chapter headings are, because a few more gray hairs since too. And then the last chapter, Who Will Drive My Soul? About how do you want to live? Do you want to live, again, reflectively, consciously? So it was a good exercise in just bringing together some of the wisdom I think I had culled till that time. Most of it through a lot of pain and struggle, which when I talk to other people, again, universal themes is quite common. People don't just kind of get there generally. We normally, are taken there dragged. And I always joke, when I think of that beautiful poem, I think came out in the 70s, footprints, with Jesus, why was there only one set of footprints? It was then that I carried you. And I said, well, mine would have drag marks. It wouldn't be clean prints in the sand. You would know the struggle. So, yeah, it was ended up being a very grace-filled experience to write that book, and then to know that it has touched the lives of others has been quite humbling, actually. I apologize for my voice going in and out. I'm struggling a little bit with a sinus infection, so I got my lemon water and my little Hall's Mentoliptus, and so I just want to apologize, but I'm good to go here.
Yeah, no worries. We can hear you just fine.
Good.
Gosh, there was so much in what you just shared, and I loved how you spoke about experience and reflection coming together. And basically what I heard was, if we don't stop and reflect, we repeat the same things over and over. And so reflection can help us break the pattern. So that was a lovely way of putting it. Yeah, I also agree with you, Joan. So many things. I really think that's that everybody on earth has their own struggles, has their own stuff, their own bag to carry. A few years ago, I just thought to myself, well, shit becomes fertilizer.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you didn't say it in those words, but that's what you're basically saying, is that the struggles are where we grow. They help us be who we are today. They form our spiritual beliefs and the way we live, and all those kinds of things. And without them, who would we be?
Right. Yeah, and I don't think we talk about that enough, really. I'm sure you're very aware of Brene Brown and her work on vulnerability and just the importance of that, And I think for me, writing the book too allowed me to just, get raw and real. And it was a little bit of a scary feeling, to be honest. I mean, I've talked to other authors, and you do really feel like when it goes to print, you're birthing this baby that you have been, growing and has been gestating within you. In my case, for 5 years, because I was working as a vice principal at a very busy school, 2,500 kids, St. Mary's, actually in Kitchener. Wow. A beautiful community. I loved it, but it was busy as hell the best of times. You said shit, so I figure I can say hell. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. And so it did. I really was only writing through the summers and then on Sunday mornings. So it was about a 5-year process, but in looking back, I think that was meant to be. In fact, I know that was meant to be because it gave me even more time to live a little bit and to do more reflecting as I went. But I didn't want it to be I didn't want it to be plastic. I didn't want it to be, soft coded. I just wanted to be very real with, my feelings. And it was, I think it did open doors for people. One of the nicest letters I received, it was an email. And it was from a 78-year-old nun. And she had read chapter 2 about my whole journey to accept who I was. A lot of people don't realize that gay people have to come out to themselves first and foremost before they come out to others. Sometimes that can be years and decades. And sometimes people never can take it to the next step of then coming out publicly. Yeah. And she was in that situation that she was aware of who she was in her early 20s, and now she's 78. And she read chapter 2 and closed the book, said a prayer, and then went into her community where they were gathered for dinner and said, after dinner, I'd like to chat, and came out to the 7 or 8 fellow sisters that she lived with. And she talked about how freeing that was for her. And, it's very complimentary that the book helped her do that. But I said to her, really, that wasn't about my book. That was really about your readiness, the whole, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. Yeah. So my words just affirmed her wisdom that she already had. And I wanted to make sure that she owned that and took ownership of that and didn't give me that power. And yet it was really nice to know that at least nudged her a little bit to take that final step that seemed to mean a lot to her, that she was able to do that.
Yeah. And I hear what you're saying. Sorry, Marg, about, she was ready to hear it. I also think, though, sometimes we don't take enough credit for being the one to be able to give that person a nudge, or just, we're in the right place at the right time, exactly as they are for that to happen, right? And so to me, that's sort of divine order. And sometimes I know for myself, and that's one of the things about all these books, is reading them on them and talking about them deepens the meaning of what it means to me personally in my life. And so again, without the book or books, I wouldn't be who I am today either.
Right. Yes.
And the storytelling.
From that perspective. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Marg.
And the storytelling, and I don't mean just literally in the story in a book. I mean the storytelling of when we share one-to-one or within a group our personal life and our journey. I know when I came out, I don't mean being a gay woman, but when I came out, which I am, but being having a mental health issue, disorder, whatever, people came to me and said, "Me too," or my person in my life, and it became freeing for somebody else, and so it released something for me, but it also, I believe, helped other people. And so with your book, did you feel that you learned lessons too? Like, did you go, "Oh, I wrote that. Hey, wait a second. What can I learn from it?"
Yes. Actually, I had folded in some of the journal entries. I've always kept a journal since I was, in my teens. I mean, I didn't write it in every day. Normally wrote in it when I was going through tough times or really good times. I still do. That's when I'm attracted to doing that. And so when I would go back and read those, I would think, "Oh, did I write that? That's not bad." And so I was able to choose some of those pieces that I thought would be good examples for what I was writing about. And one of the people I write about in chapter 3, one of my spirit guides, his name is Graham Jackson. And I'm not sure if he's still the director of the Jungian Institute in Toronto now or not. But he was a very seminal person, I know, for that organization. And I feel very blessed to have worked with him for over 10 years doing dream work, unconscious work, working with my shadow, those things that we don't want to acknowledge, let alone deal with. So challenging work. And yet he held me with such grace and helped me walk into my truth in many layers. And I think of, and again, very Jungian driven, about how Carl Jung says we're called to wholeness, not perfection. And that was really important, I think, for me when I was doing my book, to try to emphasize that we are all saint and sinner. All of our institutions are saint and sinner. We're both and, not either or. And I found that personally very, very liberating to realize I could be a real jerk at times. If I'm tired, if I'm run down, I can become quite arrogant, quite self-righteous, quite dismissive. I could go on and on. Probably if I had my family here, they could add a few more. But I can also be very kind and very compassionate, very thoughtful, very caring.
Absolutely.
And, the importance of acknowledging all of us.
Yes.
Because that's, I believe, where we really find ourselves, where we come to that divinity within, and can be forgiving of ourselves rather than damning of ourselves. And so, otherwise, if we're called to perfection, I remember Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and a number of other books. She had this line, and I just loved it. She said, fear is just perfection in good shoes. Perfection is fear in good shoes. I thought that's so true. And how Brene Brown talks about how we then armor up if we feel, we need to, be perfect, to prove, perform, all the things we do that really take us away from who we are authentically.
Yeah.
One of the other themes for me beyond the call to wholeness, not perfection, was also unlearning. which was very counterintuitive for me as an educator.
Mhm.
But the more I live, the more I realize a lot of what I'm doing, and I think I did throughout that book, was unlearn things that I had come to believe about myself, about other people, about the institutions that had been part of raising me in my belief system.
Mhm.
And, it's funny because I was called in by a few of the director of education, the chaplain at the time, and the board. When my book came out, I was still a vice principal at St. Mary's, I think only for maybe 3 weeks more. And it must have been a very, very slow news day at the Record, because it ended up being front page.
Wow.
The vice principal comes out, and thought, okay, here we go. That was, I think, on a Saturday. And then the Monday morning, I thought, here's the phone call's going to come in.
Mhm.
And there was very little negative response to that. And I thought, some of it was my projection and my own shame, feeling about my internalized homophobia, feeling that, the world was going to crumble because Joni Grundy had come out as gay. Am I really that important? Like, it was quite really, when I look back at that. But really, the only 2 phone calls I got were from moms of gay sons. And they were both very moving. The first one, the woman just thanked me for what I was doing, and then through tears said to me, I really believe my son would still be alive had he gone to your school. I've done a lot of work within our community and our board on support for gay kids and gender minority kids. She was crying, I was crying, and I often put it on speakerphone just so I can take notes sometimes if I have to, follow up. And the door happened to be a bit open that day, and the secretary was crying when I went out because she heard the conversation. And the second conversation, the mom just said her son really wanted to teach in the Catholic system, but ended up teaching in the public board. And not there's anything the matter with the public board, because there isn't, it's just different. And she said, I'm glad you're doing this work so that people can see who they are. So, that was quite an experience. And then receiving emails from kids I had companioned them when they came out, and it was so cute. One young guy who wasn't so young anymore, I think he was in his was 31 or something, and he wrote an email, said, Miss G, they still can't call you by your first name. I still run to people at the bank. I said, please call me Joan or Joni. They're like, I just can't. And he said, you were there for me when I came out, and I saw this on what was our station there that was Canada wide? We don't have it anymore. It was a great little morning show news. Anyway, he saw it when he was out in BC, and he said to me, you were there for me. I'm going to be there for you. And so, it was quite lovely, really. And the kids at the school, like some of them kind of were looking as they walked by, should I say anything? Other kids like high-fiving you. And I got a card from one of these students as recent as 4 days ago with a lovely note in it. And they don't let you go, and I'm glad they don't. It's I went into teaching because I wanted to make a difference. It's just so affirming and humbling when, young people who are now, married and have little babies, have their own adult lives, and they still remember that you helped them along the way, so.
Joni, I have to ask you, how did you manage to stifle yourself for that many, those years, years that you weren't able to say who you were?
Yeah. I always say, that the closets are for brooms, not people. And one of the cues to me that I needed to start being more authentic publicly is my asthma, which I've had since my mid-20s, was getting really, really bad. And I thought, what? I'm using these inhalers. They're helping, but there's got to be something else. I went to a naturopath. And after talking to me for just like 15 minutes, he said to me, and it was challenging, he said, well, let's talk about your emotions. Like, you're obviously really good at repressing, because this is what this is about, right? And I was like, I remember going to the parking lot after and sitting in my car like a 3-year-old, like, but I went back to him and we did dialoguing about it. And I thought, this is kind of killing me from the inside out here. And on a metaphorical and literal level, the breath was being taken from me. So, and helping so many young people, really encouraging them to live who they were, and not being able to do that. And that really haunted me, because I thought it must seem very hypocritical, because many of them knew, gaydar, call it what you want, sporty looking, short haired, young woman, not so young then, I guess.
Gym teacher.
Yeah. So they kind of figured it out, so I asked a few of them after that article came out and I came out, and even years later, I said, I really struggled with not being able to be honest and asking you to be honest in your lives. And they said, oh, we knew, what was going on. We knew you couldn't. And we just really appreciated that you pushed the envelope and probably put your job and your, basically your career at risk, trying to help us and push for support for us. So that relieved a lot of my Catholic guilt at the time. And then people said to me, after the book came out and they read the chapter and they saw it in the press, CBC, and they said, no, not trying to be critical, Joni, but why? I mean, most of us knew you were, because I'd been out to a close circle of colleagues and friends for many years. Those allies were really important to me in my survival, to stay in those closets publicly. But they couldn't understand why I felt the need to say it. And I said, I've been representing young 2S LGBTQ plus kids for decades in my role. I've been representing the board and what we're trying to do in the board, because we were pretty much leading in the province as a Catholic board for doing the work in this area. And at the time, I represent myself. It's one thing for people to kind of know that little secret, that I can quietly share, and please don't many people, and my job could be on the line, kind of thing. And I'm not being dramatic when I say that. At that time, I did have a friend who was fired, not in our board, but in another Ontario Catholic board. So the threat was real, and I said, no, I need to name this for myself. I need to walk into my truth. And then when the board asked me to come back and do some supplying in the fall, which said to me, it's a lot of integrity and courage on their part, because I said to them, I'll go back, but I'm not going back as a closeted person. I'm not going to have a loudspeaker, in the morning, good morning, stand for the anthem. It's your supply gay principal speaking. Like, I wasn't going to do that. But if they asked me, or they said, oh, aren't you that teacher that used to be here, came out, I'm going to say, yes, I am. And interestingly enough, every time I would go back and supply, teachers would send all of their list of these, sexual minority and gender minority kids to me, to meet me and be able to chat with me, and hopefully I could provide some open support for them. It makes a real difference, and we're still not there yet within the Catholic school boards, but it's imperative that they get there, because it reduces suicidal ideation by almost 50%. Some studies show, if you have openly gay educators in your schools. It's really important. It literally can be a matter of life and death for kids.
And that's a huge, huge why, and the difference that your book has made, for sure. It's time for us to take a couple of minutes break. So grab yourself a quick glass of water or run to the loo and come on back. We'll see you soon.
Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Wow, what an awesome conversation we've just had. Really, really special. Thank you, Joan. Before the show, I heard something mentioned about Joseph, and I don't know who this person is or was. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. One of the blessings, really, that and gifts that come with doing the work of supporting 2S LGBTQ youth is also having the ability to also support adults who are on the journey. And JP is my cousin, and born biological female with the name Joan. So I do tease him sometimes about abandoning ship with our wonderful name together. But quite happy as Joseph Patrick now. And I think he's tuning in. So hello, JP. I hope you don't mind me talking about you. I talk with him sometimes when I give talks and do workshops. And he's one of the people that has taught me a lot about the transgender experience. You know, sometimes when you are a sexual minority person, people assume you know everything about every gay person. You know, you get asked questions in workshops. Well, do gay people think this or do gay people think that? And I'll say, well, this gay person can share her opinion. But I can't speak for other people's lived experiences. Having said that, I certainly don't mind when people reach out to me and want to learn more about the gay experience. I can certainly talk in some generalities, so I don't want to discourage that. But I always want to be really clear that I speak from my own lived experience.
Right.
And that's why, for me, in honoring JP, my words that will follow now don't speak for his experience. You did interview him, and he did a lovely job sharing his life with you. JP presented to our family initially as being gay. Part of that, he explains to me, is because really didn't have words for it at the time. And certainly his physicians and people that he worked around as a nurse in a local hospital didn't have those words to help him sort of understand. And although words can also be used to label people, and I do think we need to be careful when we use them at times, they're also very helpful for helping us to understand some commonalities that some people have. And so he's really helped me a lot. And I've been feel very privileged to have been let into his journey with him. And he has also helped me in my journey. I remember when I was having my first crush and we were golfing, and I'll never forget what hole we were on at Paris Golf Course. That no longer exists, sadly. Saying like, I don't know what to do. Like, I think I feel this way, but I don't know. And he said, oh, relax. You'll know what to do when the time comes, So he was very calming for me in my journey. And he let me in even so far as when he began his transitioning and began his hormone use. I went with him to meet his doctor, who also identified as trans. And it was such a wonderful, very moving experience for me to literally pull my chair back and let the two of them dialogue. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think that was one of the first moments that JP had felt truly seen, truly heard, truly known, truly understood. I mean, as much as those of us who loved him, his family and friends, we don't have that same lived experience. I certainly have the experience of living in the world as a minority person, but I think it's extra hard, if I may say, just from my lived experience walking with him, to have the transgender experience. And there's that other layer of now misunderstanding for a lot of people, and ignorance in the true sense of the word, the not knowingness, and trying to wrap their head around that can be for some people a bit harder, probably because of not as much education and dialogue about the transgender experiences happen. I'm glad to see it's beginning to being reflected and talked about in our larger culture, social media, television, movies, and all of those are very helpful to debunk a lot of the myths that, like what's happening in the US right now. It's interesting because every time I talk or I'm interviewed, you say, well, you know, should you be political? But for me, being human means I have to be political at times. There are things that happen in the world and happen to humanity that you need to speak out about. And one of the quotes I feel really strongly about and haunted my entire career, still haunts me in the best of ways, is all it takes for evil to persist is for good people to do nothing. Edmund Burke. I had that in my guidance office. I had that in my classroom portable. I had that in my VP office, my acting principal office, and it's etched in my heart now. And so, you know, there are times where we need to speak up. And right now, what the U.S., some politicians in the U.S. are doing and want to do further around, particularly the trans community, makes my skin crawl. You might as well give loaded guns to some of those young people. Or it's hard enough being a young person and then having to deal with all of that, sorry, no other word for it, but crap on the outside coming at them is immoral. How about you instead educate yourself? How about you talk to some people who have lived that walk, who are walking that journey? When I was in the classroom, I had panels a lot because I wanted the young people to meet people, not labels. Because when you hear gay, homosexual, transgender, divorced even, right? All these labels, I wanted them to meet people. And as soon as I found that, and I taught at the secondary level, that teenagers would meet people, boy, it was transformative for them. It wasn't just a head, but a heart experience for them. So got off a bit of a tangent there, but when I think about people who are trans and what the world is doing to them, and I know with JP, as he shared, you know, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, and I can speak for myself that having to work through shame in work against perfectionism is going to be a lifelong journey for me. Because I thought if I was a really good teacher, if I was really good at this, I tried to be a really, really, really good, almost perfect person. Then when they learn that thing about me, maybe they'll still like me. I still have that in me when I meet new people, you know, on that boat, cycling and sailing last week in Croatia. I'm now meeting 31 new people that I'm going to be on this boat with for a week. And, you know, you're coming out all the time, right? And you're kind of gauging, oh gosh, you know, and again, making my own judgment. So there's, you know, 4 people from the States. Are they Republican? Like, how are they going to feel about me? Not that all Republicans feel that way. Again, learning I need to do about how about you give these people a chance? Just because they're from the U.S. doesn't mean they buy into this. But there's a protective layer of yourself emotionally, and in some cases for trans people, physical threats, and for some gay people, you know, you do have to be careful about who you reveal who you are too. So I have a real empathetic relationship with JP on the level of, again, living as a minority in the culture, but just witnessing his struggles, how hard he can still be on himself. I'm not telling tales at a school, to be honest, to say he still struggles with that. I see that in him. He's one of the most kindest, non-judgmental people I have ever met in my life. And that challenges me to be better and to be less critical. And so I learn from him. And I think part of the reason he is so kind is he knows what being hurt and being judged feels like. And so he doesn't want to do that to other people. But I've learned a lot. You know, we used to use the term, you know, male to female or female to male transitioning. And he said to me one day, you know, I don't like that use of language because I've always felt male. I didn't transition from female to male. I was always male. My body that was betraying me. My heart always knew, my soul always knew that's who I was from a very, very young age in his case. He's transitioned really well. but there's those that haven't, particularly those who've transitioned, who were born biologically male and always identified socially and emotionally as female, and then now are transitioning externally to look female. And for some, it's very difficult transition for them. So some of the hatred and the bias and the negativity that gets thrown at them makes it very dangerous for them. How courageous it is. Stepping into their truth, living their truth, knowing that it can be dangerous for them emotionally and or physically. Yeah.
Dangerous and yet desperate to be able to be themselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know as someone who loves him, I'm absolutely thrilled, that he took that step in, and to see, the beard coming in, and he's just so cute, he'll go, see, and I might see two hairs, initially. Oh yeah, it's coming in well, He's right now, he's cursing me. I'm going to tell you that. No JP now, it's full and it's all good. It was really exciting to see him, again, back to that first meeting with that doctor, was going to help him transition. And he came equipped with all the reasons why he felt he should be able to go on the hormones. And she just said, I don't need to hear that. You're telling me this is who you are. You have to explain this to me. I believe you.
Right.
I know that was a profound moment for him, because his whole life he had to be explaining to people who he was all the time, and trying to, some ways, not convince, but help them come to some understanding. My mom, God love her, my mom was amazing. She died at 92, and she had lots of questions about her then niece to nephew, right? And was trying to explain to her, well, Mom, some people, going through it all methodically, and she was listening. She goes, oh, you know what? I just love all the people that he is.
Oh, that's so sweet.
He doesn't have multiple personalities, but it was horrible, and he told me that because JP's parents have been both deceased for a while. And I guess my mom hugged him on his birthday and just said how proud his parents would be for the man he's become. And I just thought, wow, my mom gave him that gift. And
beautiful.
Well, my sister, who is Jewish, and at her son's wedding, her and her husband, it's my sister Catherine, her husband Jim, came over, and Jim invited JP to join the men, with the kippah, because they had a ceremony under another tent for the men with scotch and whatever. And he just, without him, they walked over with the kippah for his head, acknowledging, you're on the wrong side here. You need to be over where you belong.
Wow.
So, I'm very graced with a wonderful family who have supported me from the very beginning. And I don't take that for granted, because I have friends and certainly familiar people who I wouldn't say are my friend group, but I've gotten to know whose families have not been that accepting. So we try to surround JP with as much love as we can. But we know he has his own journey within that to fully accept himself and celebrate himself. And it's nice to see that blossoming happen within him.
Absolutely wonderful.
Wow. I'm just picturing the two of you as children.
Oh, yes. Yes. I knew I was different. He knew very young that he was a boy. I had crushes on boys in high school, but when it came to any kind of physical expression, I was like, okay, it's been really fun hanging out with you, but I really don't want to kiss you goodnight, and really nice men. I dated a lot of really nice men. My one sister said, who's the flavor of the month, in my early 20s, I met some and dated some wonderful, wonderful men. And I've actually crossed paths since, and they just smile and say, it's okay, it's okay. But so I didn't know till I was 33, I named it for myself. I knew growing up that I was a tomboy. I wasn't excited about, the same things that a lot of girls were, getting, their first purses and their makeup and whatever, and bras. I thought, what's to be excited about getting your first bra? But anyway, they were exciting. So I feigned, oh yeah, isn't this cool? Meanwhile, I hate this damn thing. But anyway, so I knew I was a little different. Interestingly enough, the men I did end up dating in an ongoing way, with the exception of a couple, have all ended up being gay men. I find the just really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're all friends to this day, and we kind of giggle about it. And I don't know whether it was the feminine in them that I was attracted to, but because they had the equipment, you know, it was safe, you know, it could pass in the world. I don't know where that's at. All I can say is that happened. And and again, we kind of giggle about it as well, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, again, everybody's journey is so interesting, and honestly, I am glad I didn't know when I was younger. I think that would have been a lot harder. Well, I know it would have been a lot harder because I've accompanied a lot of young people in the school system. You know, I mean, at 33, I had the financial, psychological, spiritual supports around me.
Yeah.
I mean, coming up to my parents was still one of the most difficult things in my life, because I remember I was living in Waterloo and driving home, and it was Holy Thursday. And I thought, oh, is it going to be a Good Friday? You know, could this be my last supper with my parents? You know, and it's kind of interesting when I look back even at the synchronicity of it all. And they were great. You know, I was through tears, and my mom said, I wondered even when you were younger. And I thought, why is the gay person the last to know? Like, he told me and saved some heartbreak for me and those young men, you know. But my father, he just said, you know, very practical. It is what it is. But he was worried about my job. He was a Catholic trustee in the Brantford board at the time. Was for 30 plus years. We thought we were going to take him, you know, in his coffin out of that board office. But anyway, so he was quite concerned about that aspect, about, you know, not putting myself in a situation where I could lose my job. And again, that was a very real reality at the time. But yeah, I didn't know till a little later. And to be honest, I mean, some of my internalized homophobia I can now identify now. And I've told JP this story. We just always thought JP was gay, you know, and being little kids. And because JP is, again, he might not like me for this, but I believe he's almost 7 years older than I am. So, you know, he's a teen and I'm, you know, maybe 7 or 8. And, you know, we'd say we're going to visit my Uncle Mac and my Aunt Celia, and I'd say, oh, let's be friends and go homo. You know, I'd say this in the back of the car to my sisters. And, I mean, but, you know, JP was great. I remember him bringing his guitar down, and they had this stairwell, and all the adults were talking, and, you know, and he'd be showing me that at that time, me calling her still, you know, her and Joan, showing me some guitar chords, and in a room full of adults who weren't paying much attention to me, you know, he was. And so, yeah. And then as I started to wonder about who I was hanging out with him and his partner, a gay partner at that time. And I thought, I feel quite comfortable here. What's going on? And eventually, you know, just slow learner, 33. What can I say? But yeah, he knew very young. But we actually look a little bit alike. People say we both have the Wilson gene. Margaret, both for a few years. So
and if I remember correctly, although he knew from when he was young, he only transitioned much later in life.
Yes, only like I want to say 3 years ago now.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah,
I mean, to have lived really all your life up until, like you say, 3 years ago, that's like up until now.
Yes.
You know, in a body that you're not comfortable with.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Very courageous to step through that door later in life. And I'm just so glad that he did, you know. Yeah. And it was cute because we went somewhere and somebody thought we were husband and wife. I said, oh, where'd he go? I think your husband just went up over there. Well, I laughed.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw, he sent you a message. He said, thank you, my loving, supportive cousin.
That's very sweet. Very sweet. Yeah. We spend, you know, we'll have coffees together, and we're up at the park together now, and get, you know, it's nice. And I love seeing people respond to him truly as he is, you know.
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly too, he was quite a handsome fellow.
He's a very handsome man.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not going to be able to live with him. That's not going to be good. Why did you have to go there? And he's charming to boot. He's not just a good-looking guy. He's very charming and
very
kind. And he's a crossing guard. He's rejuvenated too, retired from nursing and his work at the BGH here in the Brantford General Hospital here in town. But he does the cross guarding, and I think he's won over the hearts of all the people going through there, male or female, because of his kindness. But I think he's got a couple of women that think he's okay. So yeah.
That's wonderful.
You share a sense of humor. You resemble each other, and you also share humor.
Right. And that I think that's been a survival, to be honest. I do write about that in my book too, how I've used humor to distract sometimes because but it's a very good thing. But I've had to be conscious of not hiding my true feelings behind humor, because that's very easy for me to do. But yeah, JP and I, when we get together, we do have the same humor. We'll watch something on Netflix. And remember one time his partner Judy was with us, and she just was looking over at us like, what's funny here? But we were laughing till we cried about it. Like sometimes, erring on the side of a bit of a sick sense of humor. I'm very grateful to have him in my life and all of my family members. Yeah. I'm very, very, very lucky that way.
Yeah, wonderful. And it certainly sounds like you have a very special relationship.
Yes, we do. And I think part of it is that knowingness of, moving through the world a bit differently than being kind of the pink sheeps in the family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to empathize.
I like that.
It's in a different way. Like you said, as a minority, person growing up as a minority.
Right.
Person. So
we're both really probably empaths, deeply sensitive, and I don't know where that's come out of. Oh my gosh.
That's actually a picture of him when he was on our show.
Okay. I didn't know whether you're videoing him in. I thought, how did you do that? That's pretty amazing.
I know.
Are you ready for both of us? Was my second comment.
It's not the same. Some people, if you're born a physical male and you want to transgender or transition your vehicle, then it's hard when you're like 6'2" and a really deep voice. Or if you're a woman, born physical woman, then hard to at 5'2" to take on. But I was very lucky in the way that I could transition easily. And when
Thanks, Deja.
When I first heard his name mentioned, I didn't know who he was. But then when you started talking, I'm like, oh, yes, I remember. Yes. I remember that guy. Yeah.
He's pretty memorable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah.
I suspect, Joan, having you by his side and also the wisdom that you shared in your book may have helped him. I don't know. I haven't had a conversation about this, but may have helped him as well as countless others.
Yeah. I don't know.
Keep on sharing.
He's one of my biggest cheerleaders. Like even this morning, this text, good luck tonight. You'll be great. Like he's just always so positive and affirming and very supportive of the work I did in the schools. In fact, he was on one of my panels sharing his transgender experience. And spoke quite powerfully to the students. And you could hear the pin drop, because a lot of the younger students, don't get me wrong, it's still difficult for a young trans kid to transition and to step into their truth. But certainly for JP back, he'll be 70 this January. So it's, his path's been a little different than some of theirs have been. And I think it was quite, I know it was quite impactful. Just from the comments I got from students afterwards, even in the hallways, like, wow, when he shared about, standing at the top of the hospital there, looking out that window thinking, I could end this, Yeah. And it saddens me to hear that. But I know I went through when I was 22, a period of profound depression and suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
Again, different experiences, but there's some commonality about brought us to those places. And
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my goodness, it's already 5:02. So it's certainly gone very quickly for me. And just really great to have this conversation with you, Joan. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's always good for me to just helps me do, again, more reflection like the book did. These interviews help me just reflect and also just feel, the season of Thanksgiving. Sometimes I know I take my family for granted, and
don't we all?
nice to be reminded of how important they always are to me, but particularly important that the support they've offered and continue to offer. And one of them is feeding me cabbage rolls right after this. So I'm also spoiled. I'm the youngest of 5, and people say, "Oh, you must be spoiled." I said, "You say that like it's a bad thing." Yes, I'm spoiled. And I'll admit it. I've never denied that.
Absolutely. And so what's one thing that you would like to leave our listeners with as we end today's show?
Be gentle with yourself. You're not called to be perfect. You're called to embrace all of who you are, learn through your experiences, grow through your experiences, share the kindnesses that you can, and seek out the supports when you need them.
Beautiful.
Embrace your humanity. It's okay to be human. And they say we teach what we need to learn. And so as I say that, I need to keep learning that myself. So that's why I say it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you.
What
about you, Mark? Is there anything you would like to say before we close out today?
I just was looking at the notes that I took, and experience and when experience and reflection come together, I think that's where you said that's where we are now.
Right.
Or that's where we can live our life from. And I'll take those words to heart.
Yeah.
Where I found in my own life, that's where wisdom has been found, in that intersection.
Yeah. So, and on that note, I would just like to invite people to stop and smell the roses so that they can reflect and bring the experience and reflection together in order to move past whatever it is that they're looking to change in their lives. So once again, thank you so much. We could have gone on and on and on, I know, because everything you've shared is truly fascinating, and I'm grateful for your willingness to be vulnerable, not just in the show, but it takes a lot of vulnerability to release that book. Writing it, I think, can be very cathartic, but releasing it, like you said, releasing your baby, that's very courageous. And so thank you for taking the courage, for being that brave person to do so and making a difference in this world.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a real privilege to be part of this dialogue today. I appreciate being invited. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And stay on. We can talk after we close the show. And Cheryl, what do you want to take away today?
That's what I was saying. Yeah, absolutely. Often listening back to these shows, one picks up things that we miss. So I invite people to do that, and share, and what's the third one?
Laugh.
Like, share, laugh, and let's add a fourth, and love. We look forward to seeing you next week. And thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for being here with us. See you all next week. Bye-bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.